Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni viewer, and in my recent video about the preview Godzilla the New Heroes, which is now hanging on the wall behind me, I mentioned in brief that I thought the first crossover between Godzilla and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was one of the better Godzilla comics to come out of America, but I also said I didn't think its sequel was very good. And I did get one comment on that video, curious for me to elaborate, since I had spoken about the first one in quite a few venues, actually, not just on my channel. So, if you want the details on why I really like the first crossover, you can watch that video. But the basic idea is that it delivered exactly what it was supposed to and in the best way it could have. I mean, it's a crossover that fans have wanted to see forever, right? Or at least since the 90s. This whole thing, because they were in a similar genre, right? Giant monsters, giant robots that fight giant monsters. It's a natural pairing. And as kids, if we had Power Rangers toys and Godzilla toys, we were putting them together when we were playing. I guarantee it. So to have Cullen Bunn and Freddie Williams II take that vision that all of us had as kids when we were playing and make it look as good as it does in this book, as truly epic as it can be at times. I mean, this was this was like a dream come true right here. And you know, it deserves to be counted as one of the better Godzilla crossovers. I actually think it's better the than the first Marvel crossover. Certainly, I haven't read the second one yet, but it's better than that, and it's better than the DC crossover. But then that raises the question: why didn't the second one work? Because it's doing basically the same thing. It just expanding on the idea, but why isn't it as good? Now, it has nothing to do with the change in artist. Williams the second was the artist on the first one. Baldemar Rivas, or Rivas, whatever his last name is pronounced. I'm sorry if I didn't get it right. He's the artist on the second one, but Cullen Bunn returns as writer for it. And the art style is a bit different, but it's not so drastically different that, it looks like a complete departure from what came before. But what's different about it that makes the second one not as good? Now, there is the possibility, some of you might be wondering, is the second one not as good because it's the second one? Like when the first one came out, like I said, nobody thought that crossover was actually going to happen in real life. And when it did, it was like a dream come true. But now that we had a second one, it didn't have the wow factor anymore, or so the theory might go. It's kind of like, when you're watching the MCU for the first time and you finally get to that first crossover, the Avengers, again, something that we didn't think was going to happen because, there had been massive crossover movies like that in the past, but they were few and far between, and it had been decades since the last one. We'd gotten a whole bunch of superhero movies that had nothing to do with each other. Some of them got sequels and some of them didn't, but they always remained separate. And now here comes the Avengers. Now we actually have a shared universe. We didn't think it was even possible. All the DC characters aren't our Warner Brothers. They're not even doing it. And now Marvel's done it. It was amazing. But once we get to the other Avengers movies, even if they're still good, they don't have that same level of, oh my gosh, it's happening. And I considered that, but I don't think that's the reason. I mean, yes, the second one doesn't necessarily have that same factor as the first one, but even when you remove that factor from the first one, it's still very well done. So, what's the actual reason? Well, part of it, I think, has to do with what the second story chooses to do with its plot. Uh, it goes for dimension hopping. Now, in the first crossover, they introduced the idea of a multiverse, but they kept it very straightforward. Characters from the Power Rangers universe end up in the Godzilla universe. So, even though we're going from one dimension to another, once we're in the other dimension, we stay there. and we focus on the conflict that's happening there. Very straightforward, doesn't need to be overcomplicated. In the second one, we're hopping all over the place. Now, the very last page of the first crossover did introduce the idea that there were other multiverses, but that was done more as sort of a final twist of the knife to Rita's defeat. She's falling through the multiverse and she's just surrounded by Power Rangers and Godzillas, the two forces that beat her, and she can't get away from them. So it was a nice little final joke, if you will, almost. But also just another way to make her defeat just that much worse. Just an extra little bit of salt in the wound. Here they explore the concept a little bit more. The sequel is jumping all over the place, but my word, it's I think it was a mistake because it ultimately means we never settle in one place for long enough. We're hopping all over different realities, and by the time we finally settle in one towards the end, I got to be honest, I have no clue where we're supposed to be or why I should even care. Looking through the pages again, there isn't even really much in the way of a setting when we finally land in that last place. So that makes the story feel a little bit jumbled. Like we're not settling down for long enough to actually get anywhere. Not like in the first book where we're in the one setting the whole time and the stakes have to do with that setting and we know what that setting is. So that's one factor, but it's not the only one. Another way I would describe the plot is that it's very sloppy. Like it's just sort of barreling forward, but without any real care about how well it moves forward, which winds up being an issue. In fact, the ultimate sign of sloppiness is one of the most infamous panels in the entire book. Let me see if I can find it here. Aha. Yep. It's this moment where Bulk and Skull appear. Now, Bulk and Skull are mainstays of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers franchise. Initially half antagonist, half comic relief. They wound up having some interesting character arcs as the different series progressed. But they weren't in the first of the Godzilla crossovers, which is fine. There really wasn't a way to comfortably insert them and have it make sense. But they do have a brief one panel appearance in this book, the sequel, and their word balloons are mixed up, where Bulk is Skull and Skull is Bulk. And that's just a mistake that shouldn't have been made. Even if you don't know the first thing about Power Rangers, like you're going in completely blind, don't know anything about the different characters or the lore or anything, you should be able to look at these two characters, see that one of them is tall and rotund and the other one is small and skinny, and given the two names and a 50-50 chance, you have a very good odds of guessing which one of them is named Bulk. And this book got it wrong. Even in the collected version, where they theoretically could have corrected it, they didn't. And to me, not knowing the difference between Bulk and Skull is like not knowing that Batman's parents are dead or not knowing that Garfield's favorite food is lasagna. It's one of those things that everybody knows just automatically. It's one of the first things you know about those different stories. And the fact that it happened, the fact that it got messed up like that, tells me that there wasn't really much in the way of quality control for this one. Because it's a mistake that really shouldn't have happened. And that's why I don't think pointing it out is a nitpick, because it's indicative of a bigger issue. There's just so much about it that doesn't feel like it was really thought through. Another part of this, for example, is that the White Ranger, who is also Tommy Oliver, of course, but in the comics, it's a different reality Tommy Oliver, jumps to the regular Power Rangers timeline. And of course, he's interacting with the Green Ranger Tommy Oliver the whole time, but there's never a moment where, like, White Ranger Tommy keeps his helmet on the whole time. And you'd think they could have done a little more with the idea that there are two Tommy Olivers in the same space, and maybe, like, I don't know. It just felt like they didn't really do anything with that, because there wasn't. I don't know what really the holdup would have been, but there's just so many things like that in there. Just a certain sloppiness to the storytelling. And I suppose the final nail in the coffin for the sequel would be the fact that, similar to the DC crossover, Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong, the comic has individual moments that in a vacuum are really good, but when placed in the story, there's not enough around them to actually make the moments carry the weight that they need. Like, there are plenty of things in there that are pretty darn cool, like Godzilla combining with the Dragon Zord, or the Rangers getting their own kaiju-based variants towards the end, things like that. Or bringing in other characters that we wanted to see in the first one, but there just wasn't room for them. Mothra, Jet Jaguar, those kind of guys. But the way in which we get to those moments just doesn't work. It doesn't connect the way it's supposed to. Not the way the first one does. The first one, it is solid in its storytelling. It's not like a deep, complex, thematically rich kind of story, but it's not supposed to be, and it doesn't need to be. It just needs to tell the story as well as it can, and it did. Here, it almost kind of feels like maybe Cullen Bunn wasn't planning on doing a sequel. Like, I figure that the way the first book was written probably went like this. So it's announced. Bunn and Williams are brought on to do it, and I'm assuming they're working together throughout this whole thing. So they start off by making a list of all the different things that they and the fans would want to see in a crossover between Power Rangers and Godzilla. And it's probably going to be a very long list, but as they start really working on the story, they know that not all of those moments are going to make it in, so they prioritize which ones are going to fit the best into their story. And the other ones, well, the saying is kill your darlings, right? When it comes to writing. So those other moments have to get left behind. So they put together this one crossover, figuring it's going to be the crossover, and it gets out there and it does so well that the higher ups fast track a sequel. They bring Bunn back on, but he was only prepared to do the one. He still has that list of moments that didn't make the first crossover that he can certainly default back to. But now he's just got to kind of throw something together with those moments in it. And Unfortunately, it didn't work. I know Cullen Bunn is a good writer, especially for kaiju comics. Godzilla Cataclysm is one of the better IDW Godzilla books. Here, though, like I said, he probably wasn't ready to do a second one, so he threw something together, but it just doesn't work. I suppose there are two different ways I could describe the difference between the first crossover and the second crossover. The first crossover is a length of really sturdy steel cable from one end to the other. The second crossover are different pieces of steel cable connected by wet noodles. It's just not going to have the same level of sturdiness when put up to scrutiny. Or to put it another way, the second crossover has its moments, but the first crossover was the moment. From beginning to end, it never let up, and it delivered everything it needed to. The second one delivered certain things, but from beginning to end, it was inconsistent. And that's about all I really have to say about the second crossover. I mean, it was nice to see certain other things done with the concept, but in the end, it just doesn't hold a candle to the first one. And the first one really is great. If you haven't read it yet, you really should. Whether you're a Godzilla fan or a Power Rangers fan or a fan of both. Heck, maybe you're not a fan of either and it might get you interested in one or both of them. But all the same, I just gotta say, I feel like it should have remained just the one crossover. But it's not. We have the second one, for better or for worse. And that's just where I fall on the matter at this point. There you go. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Red Omni Ranger morphin' out.